Stacy and I researched and completed our project on problem-based learning and project-based learning. So, what is PBL? According to Buck Institute for Education, PBL is a systematic teaching method that engages students in learning knowledge and skills through an extended inquiry process structured around complex, authentic questions and carefully desired products and tasks. Some similarities between problem-based and project-based learning are that they are both student-centered, students work in cooperative groups where they are active participants, the teacher is the facilitator, they are intended to engage students in real-world tasks, and the assessments are performance-based. Even though project-based and problem-based learning have many similar attributes, there are some differences between them. In project-based learning, there is a more structured task established by the teacher for the student to follow. The teacher assigns an essential question for the student and gives students avenues to solve the question. Also, many times in project-based learning, students' projects are multidisciplinary, including aspects from different subjects. These projects are usually longer and end in a concrete product, many times a presentation of some sort. Problem-based learning, on the other hand, is where the students are given more of an open-ended problem where the students have to decide how to solve the problem. Students become highly involved and gain more critical thinking and problem-solving skills by using this method. Additionally, students are usually more motivated because they design their projects and solve the problems their own way. John Dewey and William Kilpatrick are the key people involved with shaping the idea of project-based learning. In the 1900s, John Dewey was an educational philosopher who believed students should learn through active experiences for ongoing learning about dynamic world. William Kilpatrick published an essay titled The Project Method in 1918. In his essay, he gave examples of projects and defended the use of projects in the classroom. In his essay, he talked about 4 different types of projects, one being project-based learning. His ideas have really taken off in the 21st century. In addition to these 2 influential people to project-based learning, one article suggests that Confucius and Aristotle played a role in PBL. In their teachings, they taught that students need to learn by doing. Socrates also believed that one learns through questioning, inquiry, and critical thinking. Even though Dewey and Kilpatrick are more often noted for their push for project-based learning, these philosophers and teachers had similar beliefs that are the core foundation of PBL projects. On the other hand, problem-based learning was created by Barrow and Tamblyn at the McMaster Medical School in Canada. The McMaster Medical School is where they conducted the first PBL project with students at the school, and then they wrote about their findings. This study led to an increase of problem-based learning used in the classroom. Some weaknesses. One weakness of PBL projects is some of the constraints teachers face in their classroom. Some teachers feel like they are pressured for time, and PBL projects take longer to complete than direct instruction or smaller activities. Some additional constraints teachers might face include the actual amount of time they have with the students. Is there enough staff to assist with the projects they intend to complete? And do they have time to fit in all the standards that will be tested on state-mandated assessments? In addition, the Buck Institute for Education reports that PBL projects are more difficult to do with classes lasting 50 minutes or less. Some other weaknesses that teachers feel when using PBL projects include the amount of planning and pre-work needed to properly implement a PBL project, the idea of having to relinquish control and give the students more control, which is hard for some teachers, and spending the time to teach explicit knowledge that they do not already know. For example, the soft skills like working in a group, time management, etc. Additionally, when looking at Hattie's research and lists of effect size of different educational tools, PBL is listed to have an effect size of 15 hundredths. He considers 40 hundredths to be an average effect size, with anything above it being valuable in the classroom, but anything less than 40 hundredths to be detrimental in the classroom, and PBL is again listed at the 15 hundredths level. However, some strengths. Students have an increased motivation using PBL because they get to play a role in their education. Teachers also have the ability to differentiate learning instruction in their classroom by using PBL because they can tailor the assignments to students' interests or adjust to accommodate student needs. They also gain critical thinking and problem-solving skills by working together to come up with solutions to problems presented. Using PBL helps prepare students with 21st century skills. Students gain skills in collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and it helps foster a growth mindset. All of these skills will help them be successful when they enter the workforce. And even though Hattie gives PBL an effect size of 15 hundredths, many of its components are ranked much higher. Formative assessment has an effect size of 90 hundredths. Feedback has an effect size of 75 hundredths. A challenge yields 60 hundredths. Cooperative learning at 59 hundredths. So even though Hattie ranks PBL low in the range of effective practices to use in the classroom, the individual components of PBL projects are ranked much higher.
So Tori already talked a little bit about the background behind project-based and problem-based learning, but certainly everything is rooted in theory. And so John Dewey is really who we can thank for the theoretical foundings behind project-based learning. And so as we know, Dewey supported this learning by doing idea. And so as we looked for ways that students could really learn by doing, project-based learning became something that we could use to really individualize that instruction and make sure that each learner was being fulfilled in the way that they learned and to be able to work together to develop these skills that would help to make them lifelong learners. Also, along those same ideas, we have with problem-based learning. This was started more as an instructional need in the actual medical setting where students were learning how to have a more lasting development with all of the sciences and concepts that they were learning in that true clinical setting. But today we know that problem-based learning is based on real-world problems. So if students are in auto tech or engineering or health science or accounting, that they're actually looking at problems that they will face and encounter in the real world and how they can solve those. That can certainly even be done in an English classroom, many different things that we can look at of how we would really solve real world problems and best meet their needs at the same time. So certainly with everything comes advantages and disadvantages. Through the project-based and problem-based learning, as you can see with this graphic here, students are able to go through the process of imagining how things could be, actually exploring and digging into that, best learning and thinking about those things, and then at the end, knowing how to truly solve the problem or to be able to look at the project in a way that provides them with those actual skills that will help them in the real world. And so it produces and allows students to go into that higher order of thinking, and students are truly engaged in instruction this way. And so learning is very real. It's very personal. Students are able to look at things as they solve these real world problems and how they would best do things and meet those needs. It also accommodates students' many different intelligences. We certainly know that we must differentiate learning, and this allows for that. Developing the cooperative skills, being able to look at their group members, appreciate other people's perspectives and points of view, and using actual tools that they would use in the real world, laptops, computers, equipment in chemistry, actual models in health science, working on actual cars in auto tech, and so being able to actually use what they would work with in the real world. Also, disadvantages certainly are a part. While disadvantages to me are minimal, they are there. And so as we look at that, many students have been used to sitting in a desk, 5 rows, learning, test quizzes, essays. And so while that's not as common now with the current generation, For a long time, there was a huge cultural shift. After students had been used to learning that way, it was more difficult for both educators and teachers to figure out how to best serve students through project-based and problem-based learning. So also determining if the standards are being met. We can't just willy-nilly throw a project out there and hope for the best. We have to make sure that we are meeting each individual need through those projects, and that each individual student is mastering, not just the overall group. It certainly is more difficult to obtain evidence of student knowledge at times. Again, you can't look at that whole group and say, well, this group got it, because did each learner in that group get it, or are they hiding behind another learner? And so that's something that we have to consider as well. Also, how to use this, or how is it being used in the US and worldwide. With the development of Common Core standards, it certainly is being used in the US readily. Many people have gone to this, as we have gotten with the Common Core approach across the board pretty much now. And so it is very frequently used in all classrooms across America, as teachers have developed different SLOs and different approaches to best meet students' needs. Problem-based and project-based learning have certainly become a part of that. Teachers meet in PLC groups and figure out how to best meet these needs. Also, worldwide, there are many conferences that address this. PBL World is one of them, where educators actually come together and have this hands-on approach. Another one is global project-based learning, where people come together and connect students across all continents to make sure that we're best supporting them and that they're learning the skills to solve these real-world problems. As far as my personal philosophy, I do believe that teachers should base their curriculum or standards on student data. I think that worksheets should rarely be used, almost if ever. If you're pulling them from the internet, they've got to be tweaked to meet your group of students, not just printed, copied, and put on their desk. Pre-assessments are very important to figure out where students are, so that we can make very specific plans to match each student's needs. Formative assessments every day are just necessary. It's a necessary part of learning, and students have to be assessed and reassessed in order to prove mastery. They need to be part of these conversations about their own learning as we help them to reach the mastery and give them feedback along the way. The assessments have to address a lot of different learners and modalities of learning, and while summative assessments are necessary to prove mastery, they don't always have to be paper pencil tests. They certainly can be project-based learning, problem-based learning, portfolios, essays, and many other types of assessments that can be used in place of an exam. Once the results of summative assessments are in, teachers have to reteach material that students didn't master before they can move on to a new set of material. Reteaching can occur through individual tutoring sessions, or, depending on the number of students affected, whole group instruction. Teachers can celebrate with students as skills and standards are mastered to encourage new learning and motivation.
I believe students should receive teacher-created instruction that is student-centered and student and data-driven. Instruction should be differentiated, where all students receive instruction on their level to reach the needs of every student in the class. Students should be taught through inquiry-based learning. Assessments are a valuable tool to monitor students' knowledge and understanding. Formative assessment should be used daily to help drive instruction, and summative assessments should be used to verify that every student has mastered that skill.
And finally, to sum up our project here, screencast, we would like to share with you our references that we used in order to develop our screencast on problem-based and project-based learning.